Wow. Thank you so much, Montana, for opening your heart to the world and publicly standing up for Jewish people around the globe and creating this documentary. And I feel so fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to ask you questions about your journey
And
and
with none other than Montana Tucker, and we're here to talk about her incredible series.
um and so now we're gonna go into the Q&A portion of this event. And so I've prepared some questions to get us started, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody here to ask questions. And first of all, especially watching it the first time, so many emotions. Even though I wasn't there, but just seeing you there has a big impact. And especially the moment I want to talk about when you and your mother were standing right near the train where your grandmother was when she was 13 years old. Looking back at that now, you've been there, you heard the story, but how do you think, that moment changed you looking back at it from then?
I mean, I have seen this now probably hu- over 100 times. I can't even count how many times I've seen it. And still every single time I watch this, I feel like such strong, deep emotions. And then physically being there, I can't even describe the feeling. Before going on this trip, I heard all the stories. I saw all the movies, all the documentaries again, heard my grandparents' direct stories. But truly, I don't know if anyone in here has been to Poland, has been to the camps, but nothing can prepare you. Nothing can prepare you for that moment. And I think that's why with this series, it was very raw. We wanted it to be very raw, even from the coloring. Like, I don't know I mean, this is like a weird technical thing, but it's like super bland, the coloring. Like, we added no glitz or glam, in a sense of like, I wanted people to really feel like they were there with me. And it was really raw. So again, like, I I can't really put into words the feelings that I felt. The only thing I say is that, like, in life, you're angry at times, you're sad at times, you're happy at times. Like, you kind of usually feel those emotions separately. And I felt almost every emotion at the same time when I was there, which was a very unique feeling for me. Because you're so sad, you're so angry. And then I also had this like sense of pride and sense of like accomplishment, that I was standing there with my mother as two Jewish women that came out of this terrible place, standing up for what we believe in, making a difference, which is something the Nazis would have never thought in a million years would happen, right? And even after the series was made, that was something that I started to feel more. Instead of this deep sadness and deep anger, I started feeling that sense of power, of being like, well, look where we are now, right? You thought you could get rid of all of us, and look where we are now. um so yeah, I mean, again, every time I watch it, I have new feelings and new emotions. But it's been interesting because from the Jewish community, like, the messages I've received from the Jewish community, and even hearing you say such kind words to me, of, a lot of them have said, I've been so scared to be Jewish. I've been so ashamed to tell people I'm Jewish, to post about being Jewish. And you've instilled this new pride in me. And thank you. And then they shared the series. And then from the non-Jewish community, of people being like, you know what? I actually never really knew a lot of this. Thank you for sharing and educating. And then they shared it. And I think with this series, and this is something I say in general about speaking out against anti-Semitism or any forms of hate, I think a lot of people, and I even have friends who do this as well, when people are so passionate about something, I think it's very hard to not attack the other side, because you are so passionate about what you believe in. So then you're like, well, how could they say this about us? And how could they do this? And you start like attacking the other side. But I think that is the wrong way to go about it, always. And something I've noticed, and even with the series, why I think it's done what it has done, because we didn't really attack the other side at all. It was more so I was sharing what happened to my family, sharing my real experience. We even have an entire episode highlighting Righteous Among the Nations, about all the people that risked their lives, that weren't Jewish, that, did all these incredible things because to stand up for what they believed in. So I think it's important when sharing on social media and when talking about hate or anti-Semitism on social media to not attack the other side, because that will always cause more harm than good. And just educate and share the facts and share your experiences. And that's just something that I really like to talk about a lot, because I think that's what's made this most effective and what I see is most effective.
Thank you. Yeah. And also the way you bring in all your viewers, like, now this is our story,
Yes.
and it is very empowering, especially to be scrolling on Instagram and being able to see something like that. So again, thank you. And I'm also curious, was there a moment that you thought, because I know, like, you've grown up with these stories, and one day, you and your mom were like, yeah, one day we're gonna, make this trip. But was there a moment where you're like, you know what, this, I need to go now, I need to make this now and share it? Did you have that kind of moment right before, or what inspired you initially to really make it happen?
Yeah. So basically kind of like what I said, like I always had a deep attachment to my grandparents. I'm even, okay, like my nails are so messed up right now, so no one judge me because like 3 of my nails are off. But I wear my grandparents like jewelry at all times. I never take it off, especially my Zadie's. Like this is his ring right here. I have his wedding band on. I have his bracelet. So I am just like extremely, extremely attached to my grandparents at all times. Before before my Zadie passed away or anything. And so I think I always had that attachment. And when my Zadie passed away 3.5 years ago, I rewatched their Shoah Foundation testimonials, because they interviewed my grandparents years ago. And I saw them as a child, but seeing them as an adult in this stage in my life was a completely different experience. And when I rewatched their testimonials, I was like, wow, like I need to do something about this. I just did not know what. And I have a friend that's like a pretty prominent in the Jewish community and in entertainment industry. And I told him about my grandparents and about their stories. And he was like, have you ever been to Poland? And I was like, no, I've never been. My mom and I have always wanted to go. We just like haven't had the opportunity to go. And he's like, I'm going to make it happen. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go on this trip. Like, didn't think of that, wasn't even like a thought about filming it or anything. And then he connected me with this other girl who's a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, and she's a producer. And we all got to talking, and we said, hey, listen, we have the opportunity to reach millions of people on your social media. We got to do something about this. We can't just go. We gotta share it. We gotta film it. So we talked about this for about a year before we actually went. And we went last June to Poland, and we talked about it about a year leading up to it. Finally made the trip happen. And again, there was no like script. There was no we didn't know we were doing 10 parts. We didn't know exactly what we were doing. We just knew the locations we were going to, and that was it. And for me, that is something super different because I'm used to having everything scripted. I've been modeling, acting, dancing, singing, everything since I was 8 years old. And I'm always used to having a script or a clear direction of what I'm doing. I've also like never done any form of reality TV in a sense. I've never had a camera on me at all times, watching my every move. And then especially to do something that is so hard and so dark and serious and upsetting and all these things, to have a camera, it was a very unique experience. But again, it was something like I've never done before. But we went, and we shot over 100 hours of footage. We only ended up editing it into a 23-minute docuseries. I'm hoping that we can get more of that footage out there, because there were so many other really incredible stories and things that I experienced there that I definitely want to get out there. But yeah, and even when I got back, I don't think we knew what was going to happen. I mean, I had to take over my social media for 10 days to post this series. And I lost out on business deals, on brand deals. Again, people follow me for my happy fun dance videos. So I had no idea what the reaction was going to be when I'm sitting here posting a Holocaust educational docuseries, especially when in the past I've posted literally a lighthearted photo of my grandparents smiling with me and being like, I love my grandparents, they're Holocaust survivors and they have survived everything and they're incredible human beings. Like, didn't even say anything about really anything. And I've had thousands of people unfollow me being like, of course you do, making this about yourself, or the Holocaust never existed. And that was literally from a happy photo. So when we did this series, it's like, okay, now we're actually like really talking about some serious stuff here. I don't know what people are going to react, how people are going to react. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And then something really weird happened. All of the Kanye stuff started happening at the exact time we were supposed to release my series. We were always supposed to release it leading up to Crystal Knot. And all the Kanye stuff started happening. And it was like, okay, I would say I'm pretty spiritual, but not like the most over the top. But like my mom and I were like, okay, this is my Zadie. Like this is for sure him doing this because there's no other reason that this Kanye stuff is happening at the same time you're supposed to release the series, right? There's no other reason. And so we're like, okay, this is my Zadie telling me this is why I'm doing this. And we put it out and it just, the things it's been doing have just been, I mean, I never in a million years would have thought it. And I'm just so grateful that it's actually making an impact, actually changing people's perspectives, actually changing people's lives. Like I'm going to a lot of schools now and I'm speaking to the kids about this. I went to the White House, which is crazy. I'm going to Congress next week. And so create Kelly Clarkson show, Nightline tonight, by the way. You guys have to all watch Nightline tonight. It's going to be on. So crazy things are happening, right? But the most important thing is that it's making an impact and it is changing people's lives and perspectives. And again, social media can be such a dark, crazy, scary place, but it can also be such a powerful place. And you have these people that have more followers than Jews in the world talking about anti-Semitism and being anti-Semitic. So if I can use my percentage of following to impact and change, that's all I want to do and will continue to do.
That's amazing. And oh my God, congratulations on, going to the White House and night, which we'll all be tuning in. Well, I have to ask, I mean, how was that like being in, in Washington, but also being involved in Nightline and getting, seeing that impact? I mean, you kind of touched on that a little bit, but
It's honestly so bizarre to me. Like when all these things keep happening, I'm like, what? It's crazy. It's honestly crazy, but I keep again saying that, and my mom says it all the time too. It's like, we know this is my Zadie up there being like, he's a part of this. Like we know it. We know it. And for me, it's like I've I've collaborated with so many awesome people. I've been in a lot of like movies and TV shows and all these things, but to have this be what is now making the biggest impact is so amazing to me because I would rather this than anything in the world. And so I'm just so incredibly grateful and I'm not stopping. And I'm going to Israel in June, which I'm very excited about. I only went on birthright, so I haven't been back in 9 years. I only went once. So I'm really excited to go to Israel in June, and I'm gonna be like creating a bunch of awesome content about how Israel is such a beautiful country and it's a happy place, it's not a scary place. And so I'm gonna do a lot of awesome collaborations out there, and so yeah, I'm not stopping. I mean, of course, my dance videos and music and all the things are always gonna be there, but this work is not ending, and I'm just excited to like keep doing new things around this and again, it's not for me, anti-Semitism is huge, but it's all forms of hate. And I think they're all related. And that's why all my content, I have people of all walks of life in it from all different ages, all different sizes, all different ethnicities. It's about bringing everyone together, especially in these like crazy, scary times that we're in right now.
absolutely. And thank you for bringing all of us together and for impacting us. And I want to open up the floor to anyone here who has a question. Feel free to, if you want to raise your hand, there's a function on here, or if you want to just type in your question on the chat.
That's cool. I see someone raise their hand. I've never seen that.
Christian.
Hey, so I was watching the documentary and like I've known about this for a while, but it's honestly, I think what grabbed me the most was like the emotional part of it, like seeing the people that have just been like, I guess, how their lives were lost. And it's like, it's I saw this, you showed the statistic of, oh, this is the amount of people who didn't really believe in that. But I think you have to factor in like maybe there's people who just, this was taught in history class and it's like, oh, it's in the past. Let's just move on from it. They don't really see the faces. So like what else can be done to like educate other people on this subject
100%.
matter?
100%. That's what it's about. I think that's why I keep saying education, education, because first of all, in all states in the United States, Holocaust education is not required. I'm not sure if you all know that, but it's not required in every state. And then with the power of social media, you see these conspiracy videos, right? You see these athletes, these actors, these comedians, whomever that people idolize and look up to saying certain things. Kids, it's like you can't even blame them as much. They just don't know better. And so that's why it is important that people see this and that people are learning because they don't know. And there are all the statistics about over 60, I think it's over 63% don't know that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. They don't know that. There are certain things like, I forgot what this exact statistic was of people like not knowing what Auschwitz or saying like, yeah, I think I've heard of it. How do you think you've heard of Auschwitz? You know what I mean? Like there are certain things that you're like, these should be things that people absolutely know no matter what. You know what I mean? So that this can never happen again. Or why it's important for people to know, like, I don't know, like, again, I don't know. It's appropriate to talk about like the Dave Chappelle SNL skit. I don't know if everyone saw it here, but I had conversations with certain people and they were like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Whatever. It was funny. To me, like that was extremely bad. It was over 20 something minutes of a comedian being like, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews, laughing like for literally 20 something minutes. And that's how it starts. It starts by making fun of people. It starts by people laughing. And I don't know if you guys remember in the Belzec episode when there was a picture of a Nazi laughing at a Jewish man, and that was sent back as a postcard. Nowadays, we would scroll past things like that on social media and be like, oh, whatever. But like that's if social media was around back then, that's how those are the things that would have started the Holocaust. You know what I mean? So that's why these little things are so important. It is so important to continue to educate. And that's why it's like, all right, if kids are and people are not really listening in their history class, maybe they'll listen on TikTok or maybe they'll listen on Instagram or social media. So that's why, like, again, I know social media gets such a bad rep, but it's like it could also be such an important, powerful place if it's used correctly. Anyone else? That was a great question, though. Okay. I think Joelle. How we do you want? Am I able to just unmute people or? Oh,
You should be.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Got
Montana.
it. Perfect.
Terrific presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can draw a straight line. The Holocaust was in Austria and Germany, but even before that, in Russia, they had pogroms. They were not much different, but they weren't talked about. There was no media. There was no way to talk about it, except maybe in the Yiddish newspaper. But it was a virulent situation. And my mother came to this country from Russia when she was 10 or 11. And she has a vivid memory of watching from the window in her house where they were building gallows to hang the leaders of the Jewish community. And her either grandfather, I think, either that or great-grandfather, was one of the leaders of the community. And her mother had to pull her away from the window as they were hanging him. So there's a through line. And I think the value of your film is that never again final statement, because we all tend to forget. And if we forget, it can happen again. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for also sharing that story. And there are Holocaust survivors left. There are a few left,
Yeah.
but soon there won't be. And, it does scare me that when there are none left, that people are really gonna, I mean, they're already, how are there already deniers? How are there real life survivors with the tattoos on their arm, with sharing their stories so vividly? Like, what more proof could you possibly need? And then there are still deniers. So it's like, when the survivors are gone, it's like, it's kind of scary of what kind of deniers there are going to be, or how severe it's going to be. So that's why it is so important, for the younger generation to share the stories and continue to share the stories. And I always tell people, like, even when I've gone to the schools, I'm like, because some of the teachers were saying, oh, like the survivors come here and they can't really understand their accents, or they don't really connect with them as much. But then, like, I go there and maybe some of them know my TikTok videos or something like that, and I go there and speak, and they're relating to it a bit differently. But I always say, like, if you guys have the opportunity to meet a survivor, please do it and pay as much attention as you can. You have no idea how lucky you are to be able to meet a survivor. um I mean, for me to have my grandparents as survivors, like, I know I'm the luckiest person in the world. And so if anyone has just the opportunity to speak to one, I mean, throughout my series in this process, I've now connected with so many other Holocaust survivors. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Dr. Edith Eger. She's written some incredible books, and she's such an incredible lady. And I brought her into my segment for Nightline. So if you guys watch it, you'll see I do a whole thing with her tonight. But I first found out about her, Zach, my tour guide, read me a snippet of her book while I was at Auschwitz, because he knew I would connect with her. And if some of you aren't familiar with her, she was a dancer, and she had to dance for Mengele in the camps. And because I'm a dancer, he read me some of her story, and I really connected to it. Also, she was Hungarian, and so was my grandma. And I really connected to her story, but I never heard of her before. And after I got back, I texted Zach, and I was like, Zach, can you please send me the information on that lady that you read to me about? Long story short, I found her on Instagram, and I messaged her, and it was her grandson that runs her social media. And I ended up driving to San Diego, where she lives, to go meet her. And I, like, spent the whole day with her, and I got to dance with her and have lunch with her and just connect with her. And now she told me the other day, I'm like her adopted granddaughter. So that was really special. But yeah, it's really special when you can connect with a Holocaust survivor. And if there's ever an opportunity to learn from them and hear from them, I think it's so important. And so that's why I'm like, I want to soak up every moment, because I know in a few years, unfortunately, they're all not going to be around. And I know my responsibility and all of our responsibilities to then continue to share their stories.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in real quick because we got some DMs. I see Emily's hand is raised, so we can call on Emily after. We got this question on Instagram. How should we respond when we hear people making false comparisons to the Holocaust?
Okay, so this is an important question. I think it's also a question I get asked a lot of, like, do you respond to negative comments? Do you, and I always say no. I always say, and again, other people might have other opinions. All you can continue to do is educate and show the facts without responding to any negativity, because that's what they want. And I think that, again, just adds more fuel to the fire. So to me, if someone is saying something anti-Semitic, or someone is saying something negative, or someone is denying the Holocaust or denying whatever it is, all you do is post something else that's facts or educational, or something that is just proving them wrong without proving them wrong, if that makes sense. And I've seen that be most effective. Because anyone that is, just think about this, anyone that is behind their phone or even in person, going out of their way to say something hurtful and negative, and like just something that is like flat out wrong, they're looking for you to respond and get a rise out of you. That's the only thing they're looking for. Because if they just really had an opinion and like wanted to discuss it like maturely, there's a totally different way to go about that, right? So if they're doing it in any other way, all they want is a reaction out of you. It doesn't matter how old they are. We know this is like even going back to us in like middle school, of like a bully is bullying you, right? So it doesn't matter how old they are. If they're taking the time out of their day to do that. That's all they're looking for. So no, I don't think you should be quiet and just like let them walk all over you. Of course not. But I think the only thing you can do is continuing to educate and continuing to post the facts, because you can't deny that. So that's what I would say personally.
Thank you.
I think Emily has a question.
Sure. Thanks, Montana. Thanks so much. You mentioned earlier that, because it's a documentary for social media, not all of the content that, you had learned about or gathered could be posted. Is there a particular other story or memory or lesson that you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, there are so many, but there are two quick ones that I feel. Am I allowed to share two? I feel like there are two quick ones.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll try to make it short, but basically one of them is that in Poland, there aren't like any Jews left. They're basically all gone. I think hopefully a lot of us in here know that. And so that was something I personally didn't know. I didn't know that before going to Poland, that there were like no Jews left there. And it's still very anti-Semitic there. I did come across a few people that I thought were just the most special human beings ever. There's one temple that's like left, there, and it's a non-Jewish man that runs this temple. And it's like the super rundown temple. And you can tell this man is like not making a lot of money by working there. And so I asked him like, why is he doing this? Like, he's not Jewish. He's been running this temple for over 20 years. And I asked him like, why does he do this? And he said he feels he has to do it because no one else will. And I said to him, have you received any hate from guarding this temple? And his eyes started watering, and he said he couldn't even share with me the hate he's received. And I just thought that was such a special human being for doing that. I mean, again, this is not like he's making so much money, so he's just going to suck it up and do it. Oh, he learned Hebrew on his own. He's just an incredible man, and he literally guards this temple with his life, and it's so special. So that story really stood with me. Even the tour guides at Auschwitz too. A lot of them share, to go into work every single day, to have to work at Auschwitz, to have to explain the stories of the horrors that have gone on there every single day. I mean, there's no money in the world, I feel like, that can make that like worth it in a sense, you know what I mean? Except being like so passionate about it. And the guy who was with us said that his family grew up, like his, I don't know how many generations before him grew up right around the camps. And so it was really important for him to make sure that he is there now doing everything he can to make sure this never happens again, and that he is educating. And there were just a lot of stories like that. And then the other thing for me, they took us into one of the barracks of where the women had to go to the bathroom, and that visual and that story and everything will stay with me for the rest of my life. I went in June, so it was like kind of hot, like the weather wasn't too cold basically. And I was there, and we were in a barrack, and it was just me and like the film crew, so maybe like 10 of us total. And I was in there, and Zach, my tour guide's telling me about all the stuff that went down in this bathroom, how there was one time a day the women were allowed to go to the bathroom, and they had all the guards watching them, all the women watching them at all times. And they had like a second to use the restroom. And they had one time a day that they were allowed to go while everyone's watching them. There aren't toilets that flush. There are these holes in the bathroom, on the floor. And while he's telling me the story, there was this mosquito that was like flying around my face. And anyone knows me knows that I can't stand mosquitoes. Like, I just can't stand them. And so while he's telling me the story, this mosquito is flying around me, and I'm like getting really distracted and annoyed with this mosquito, right? And then all of a sudden I'm getting a little hot. I'm like, okay, now I'm like a little like, I'm like hot, this mosquito is around me, whatever. And then as he's continuing to tell the story, I start thinking, I wonder how many mosquitoes would have been around while there are hundreds of women in this bathroom going to the bathroom, or how hot it must have been in the like peak of the summer with everyone crowding, or how freezing maybe they would have been when it's winter. And all these things started clouding my thoughts and saying like, wow, it just puts so much into perspective for me of what these people endured and went through, and what my grandparents and so many and millions of people went through, that it made me be like, wow, who cares about this mosquito? Who cares about how hot I am? Like there's so much more in life to be thinking about and worrying about. And so that moment really put a lot into perspective for me. I know it's maybe like a silly story, but for me, it really, really impacted me.
Thank you. No, so I went to Auschwitz when I was in college, and I went in January. So it was extremely, extremely cold. And there was a person in my group who ended up taking off all their jackets, and I was wearing like 7 pairs of pants, and I'm still freezing, and I'm like thinking about how I'm so cold. And I just had to stop and go, like, the people that were here, if they even had clothes, it was like a pair of pajamas that were thin. And so it really does, when you're there, put into perspective just the extreme
Yeah,
circumstances.
and I also just think after, and still to this day, I'm like, how did I mean, I use my grandparents as an example because of my obvious direct relationship with him, but I'm like, how do you have the will to want to live after that? How
Yeah.
do you have the will to ever believe in people again and other human beings again? How do you go off to also be an amazing person and be so positive about life and work hard and build a family and build it? Like, how do you do that? Right? It's really crazy because especially I feel like the world we're living in now, we have so many stresses and worries every day in our lives. And I don't know if like anyone's as dramatic as me, but like I make everything into a big deal. And so it's interesting that like interesting is not the word. It's really powerful that all these people went through so much, yet still had the will to live and build incredible lives for themselves and their families and everything. So if you guys haven't all been to Auschwitz and or Poland and have a chance to go to any of the camps, like I promise you it'll change you forever. I promise. Another question? Oh yes, Nelly.
Hi. Um, so I had a question. I think I also agree with you with that education is like one of the best tools that we have and sharing stories. And I think like I was really fortunate to go to a school like our teachers spent a whole year teaching us about the Holocaust, and we had a lot of time to learn about it. Um, but like with all this going on like today and age, like the control of education and books, like how do you think we should go on trying to continue to educate people when like hopefully like it doesn't get into like more extremes, but like I have heard that there are um like bans of books in some states right now. And there have been for a while now, but now there's being even more enforced, which is kind of like scary, you know?
I think that's why I keep using social media. And again, they're trying to ban social media too, right? But I think, yeah, that's why I think social media can be this really powerful tool because also like the series now has been viewed over like 8 million times, I think, in total or something, 8 or 9 million times, I think, across platforms. Like that's crazy. Like 8 to 9 million people have watched a Holocaust educational docuseries. It's pretty wild. You know, I think to the Holocaust Museum a year, I think it's like a little over 1 million people that visit the Holocaust Museum in DC a year. I'm not, or I don't want to, don't quote me because I'm not sure the exact number, but that's why I say yes. If you know, again, I have people that aren't just in the US that follow me. I have people all around the world that follow me. So the fact that it could potentially impact people in all different countries by coming across my videos or my content, you know, that's why. And if they're not being taught in school or they're not hearing it from their parents or they're not whatever, it's like they have the option to scroll past this and learn about the Holocaust. That's all we can do. And then also I say like, you don't have to have millions of followers to post or to talk about this. It takes one person to be impacted. One. You can have literally one person that follows you. And if you impact that one person's life, the spiral effect that will happen from that is literally all you could ask for. So it does not matter how many followers you have. I think again, if you have the option to impact one, that's what's most important. I think Cash, I don't know if that's your real name, or Cash Standings.
Yeah, that's my real name.
Oh, awesome. Cool. I love it.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this, Montana. I personally wasn't aware of you or the documentary before. I heard about this through an email, and it just makes me really happy that someone with a audience and a reach as large as yours was using that for good to kind of, like you said, spread awareness and kind of fight hate with facts.
Thank you so
Going off that, when you brought up the Kanye kind of situation, it really brought me back to how I was feeling during that time. I was studying for the bar. I was already not in a great headspace just from the stress from that. But then just seeing the massive amount of just hateful comments on Instagram, it kind of bled over into the sport I do. A couple of high profile athletes were saying the Holocaust was all lies and fake and all this kind of stuff. And although there's always been hateful people, the thing that really bothered me was just how many people seem to be okay with that and either would continue to support them. I would still haven't seen my friends liking Kanye's post, even the crazy anti-Semitic ones. Other people in my sport were like, oh, well, it's their opinion. Like, what are you going to do? Cancel them? Like, just ridiculous things like that. And it affected my mental health so much that I just had to just delete social media because it just really, really bothered me. So with that being said, I can only imagine how magnified your own social media experience is just based on how large it is. Even when you said just posting a picture of your grandparents, all the negative comments you got. So with that being said, how do you personally deal with the negative mental health aspect of seeing all these anti-Semitic or people at least being okay with anti-Semitism? Do you just kind of just say, hey, people are going to suck. I'm going to just push through it and do the right thing? Or how do you personally deal with that?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that you experienced that also, and I know you're not alone in that. I know a lot of people I've spoken to had very similar experiences. I think what kept me going and even fueled me more to share my series is that like I do have this voice and I do have this platform. And if I stay silent, then so many others are going to continue to stay silent. And that maybe by me speaking up, it will inspire others to speak up and change their perspectives. I mean, still to this day, I have friends who are Jewish and behind closed doors are like involved in Jewish like groups and like organizations, whatever. And then when it comes to social media, they talk about like every other political issue, every other like social issue, and like they don't say anything about anti-Semitism. And they're Jewish and they're like very Jewish and they're so scared. And I asked like nicely, like, why do you feel you don't? And they're like, honestly, I'm scared it's gonna affect my work and that it's gonna affect me getting jobs. And that is so sad to me. You know, it's so sad to me. I mean, whether you're Jewish or whatever race or ethnicity you are, or sexual preference or whatever, like the fact that people are scared to just be themselves and talk about who they are and where they come from and what their background is and what their ethnicity is so sad to me. But it's so common. And so that's why for me, I was like, no, I need to do this even more because if I have the opportunity to change people's perspectives, I think also like I do have a really big younger generation following that follows me that I know these things are happening in school also that it's really scary. It's a really scary place. I mean, and even the comments like, so my real name is Montana Tucker, but I always get people being like, "You're not Jewish with your name like that. Like that's not a Jewish name." Or you look like that. Like you're not Jewish, no way. Which is super offensive to me, by the way. But I think that's why again, sharing on social media where people might not know I'm Jewish or might not believe I'm Jewish or whatever to show that being Jewish can look all different ways, can sound all different ways, can be all different things. You can be from so many different places, look so many like it's really important that people also are sharing like the positivity of being Jewish too, you know? And I was even saying this the other day, like I don't do Shabbats every Friday at all. Like I don't, I'm not gonna say I do, but like I love Shabbat dinners. And I think if it's an opportunity to bring people who aren't Jewish to like a Shabbat dinner where they can learn like just more about like our like culture and our values and our morals and all these things that come around being Jewish that aren't just like these stereotypical things that people think like a Jewish person is. That's why even when I'm like going on my Israel trip, it's so important for me to show how like special being Jewish is, and special Israel is not, it's anything to do with the politics or the craziness that is going on in that sense, but really being like, being Jewish is so much more than what people think. So
Thank you. We're gonna have our last question with Susan, then yourself.
Hi there. Hi. I just wanted to thank you really so much for using your platform to be so honest, so raw, so informative, and connect with so many different generations. I'm really inspired. I work in influencer marketing, and I am wowed by you. I think that you are a great voice to connect. I have a daughter who's 13. And there will be so many younger generations that, to your point, it's very important that they hear and revere Holocaust survivors. But or not really but in addition to that, I think that they will be more inspired and more apt to listen and feel the importance of this, and probably remember a lot more, pay attention a lot more by listening to the way that you have communicated your story. And so I just wanted to thank you, because I'm very moved, and I can't wait to watch these videos and this documentary that you've put together about your family with her. And I guess my question would be, are there materials that you've come across that you think a younger generation would relate to, in addition to your phenomenal content that you're creating?
well, first of all, thank you so much for saying all that. That really, really means a lot to me. And I think I've gotten a lot of messages from parents kind of saying the same thing, and also sharing that they watched it with their kids, because we made this series really for the younger generation. The fact that it's now crossed over through so many generations, and it's being watched by so many different groups of people, I think is so special and important. I mean, that's all we could have ever asked for. And the fact that kids and parents are watching it together and bonding and then discussing it together, I think is so powerful. Another thing that I've seen, if any of you guys have seen it before, this came out years ago, but it's totally different than my series, but I think it definitely, for the younger generation, I think can relate to it, is Eva stories. You guys familiar with Eva stories? So it was interesting. It was an Instagram account that was made called Eva Stories. And what they did was they made it, it's like, I mean, it's not a docu-series, it's like a movie in a sense, I guess, but they made it all on Instagram as if social media was around during the Holocaust. So it's this little girl, Eva. I think it's based on a true story. And like the quality of the videos are like movie qualities, but they have like this little girl with her cell phone basically documenting the whole Holocaust, but it's like all taking place back then. It's kind of crazy how they did it. And they did, like, you know how you can do story highlights? Every day there's a story highlight leading up to like when her family gets taken on the train and the thing. And it's really powerful the way it was done. But I think that's only other, like, I feel like Holocaust educate. I mean, again, it was more of a movie versus like a docu-series, but it was really, I think, for the younger generation to relate to it, because it used Instagram and like boomerangs and like all kinds of things that kids use every day. And it basically, like, this girl talks about how she wants to be a reporter when she grows up, and she has all these aspirations, and then you see everything just start crumbling, and it's like exactly how the Holocaust was. So I would say that's only, and that was just made solely for Instagram, Eva Stories. Of course.
Thank you so much for being here, Montana, and everyone in Montana, for inspiring us and sharing your story and educating millions. And I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity and to also wonderful questions, everybody. And
Everyone was so, thank you first of all for bringing me into this. And again, I hope to meet you all in person and come to San Francisco and meet you all in person, which would be awesome. But really thank you all for tuning in and watching the series. And you guys can always DM me if you have any questions or anything like that. But again, like I said, I hope to come meet you all in person soon.
that'd be amazing. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you,
Okay, thanks.
Montana. Thank you, everyone,
Bye.
for joining.